Welcome back, everyone. Britney Spears' public outcry over her 13-year conservatorship is now being heard on Capitol Hill. Today, a bipartisan bill was introduced in Congress that could give Britney and many others the right to ask a judge to replace a guardian or conservator without having to prove misconduct or abuse. About 1.5 million Americans are now under a guardianship or conservatorship, and they could be impacted. Tonight, we're joined by the bill's co-sponsor, Representative Nancy Mace, Republican from South Carolina. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, Congresswoman.
Thank you so much for having me this evening and bringing this very important issue to attention.
You're calling this bill the, quote, Free Britney Act. Walk us through what this could mean for Britney Spears' case and beyond.
Right. There are, as you mentioned in the introduction, about 1.3 million people in the United States who are under conservatorship. And when Britney Spears gave her very courageous testimony last month in June, detailing some of the abuses that she feels she's been at the end of over the last 13 years, it was a remarkable moment because it brought attention to a need that is out there. There is abuse. Long before Britney Spears was ever topping the charts, there was abuse in the conservatorship program throughout the United States. And so what she's done is bring great attention to millions of people that could be affected. And what this bill would do is allow someone in a conservatorship to petition the court or petition a judge and allow them to have the option of having someone like a public guardian who has no conflict of interest, financial or otherwise, be in charge of their conservatorship. Because if this can happen to Britney Spears, it can happen to anyone in this country.
And many Americans who live under a guardianship or a conservatorship arrangement suffer from severe mental illness or dementia. If this bill is to become law, do you think that there's a risk that some of these individuals might not have the capacity to make the best decisions for themselves?
Well, that's why this is adjudicated in a court of law. The system is not perfect, but what would this allow the individual to do is to be able to petition the court to get them someone who is not related to them, who doesn't have a financial interest, like in the case of Britney Spears, someone, you know, her dad, who's the individual head of her conservatorship, there's a financial tie there. There is a conflict of interest when you look at this case. And so we want to make sure we remove those conflicts of interest so that the court and a public guardian could make the best decisions in the best interest of the individual in the conservatorship. And I look at Britney Spears, I'm a single mom, and some of the things that they've done to her, forcing her to have an IUD, those are things that are done in communist China and shouldn't be done in the United States of America. And we ought to give her the option of petitioning the court for an individual to be ahead of and in charge of her conservatorship who doesn't have a financial stake in her work. And she's been working every year of the last 13 years that she's been in the conservatorship.
We see you have your Free Britney T-shirt on. Would you say that this case is an extreme case, an outlier? Or are you hearing many abuse allegations like hers?
Since we've come forward with this legislation, this is bipartisan legislation. I want to thank Crist in Florida, a Democrat, that we are working together on this. We have heard from a number of people in conservatorships and or their family members who've seen abuses within the system. And we drafted this bill in a very narrow way. For many people who are involved in the conservatorship process in the United States, they don't think it goes far enough. But this is a good first step where we can get the right and the left, Republicans and Democrats, to come together on this one issue, particularly when we are a nation divided right now. It's very few and far between we can actually find the opportunity and time to work together, and this is one of those unique places to do that.
And I really want to piggyback off of that notion, right? Because as you just mentioned, this is, of course, a bipartisan bill that you introduced with Democrat Crist. Do you have any thoughts as to why you and Congressman Crist could come together for the Free Britney Act, right? But lawmakers can't seem to reach agreement on issues like major infrastructure deal that impacts a lot of people that lawmakers in both parties say is something that's necessary.
Right. And we're going to disagree on 80% of the things, but where are those 20% of things where we can agree? And right now it's politics as usual. This is not the first time Charlie and I have worked together on legislation. We've worked together multiple times now on bringing together bipartisan legislation because that's what we promised our districts we would do. And it's really hard to find individuals, Republican and Democrat, that will really come together and do that. And so where we can work together, the 10 or 20% where we can, we ought to. And one would think that roads and bridges wouldn't be Republican or Democrat. Filling a pothole affects everyone. But that's not where DC is right now. And I'm literally willing to work with anyone who's willing to work with me, regardless of an R or a D or red or blue by your name. It's important to show leadership right now, particularly given the divisions this country is facing.
And we're really out of time, but do want to just get to those who might be critical and say, look, there are eviction moratoriums that are about to come to an end. There are really some pressing issues. Why take this and wave the Free Britney flag?
Well, it's timely. What Britney Spears did last month in June was bring enormous attention across the country, even across the world, to the human rights abuses that are done. And where we can work together, we should. We absolutely, the American people deserve that. And this is an opportunity to lead in a bipartisan manner. And we're working hard to do just that.
Congresswoman Nancy Mace, we thank you so much for your time. As always, appreciate you coming on the show.
Oh, thank you, as always.